Hello, friend. That's lame. Maybe I should give you a name.
I took my own sweet time to complete this show in order to be able to properly feed my fandom towards it. I started writing this post midway through the show because each passing episode has been developing an extremely strong connect with me as a viewer. Personally, I'm not a fan of the binge watching culture that, at this point, my generation is pretty much defined by. The whole point of an episodic structure in long form stories is meant to give the audience a pause, a breather after each episode ends. The watch next episode feature, inherent in streaming services, has really spoiled us as viewers by tapping into our greed. I take pride in being a slow watcher, taking my time digesting each episode. With a plot structure as complex as Mr. Robot,
you have a lot to think about.
It actually becomes necessary to meditate on where you are as a viewer in the world that this show inhabits. Mr. Robot flows with a certain concept known as circular storytelling.
I think the one thing that I love, and Tarantino does this a lot, but I loved not just anticipating what happens next, but wait a minute, what happened before and what happened over there, and it was sort of this panoramic view of storytelling. And I always kind of liken Mr. Robot and the way we tell that story to, like, you know, you're kind of standing this close to a painting, and you're just stepping back, and then you see that picture, and then you step back, and then you see more of the picture, and it kind of recontextualizes what you thought was true, and you step back. Actually, it's a lot like what Hitchcock does. It's like sort of circular storytelling, where you're kind of giving the pieces around the story, and it's not about this sort of straightforward linear storytelling. Yeah, that was, for whatever reason, that always resonated with me.
The filmmakers very consciously deal with information, how much to hold on to, how much to give away, meticulously planning and charting out the journey as each episode plays out. I picked up the show around end of 2016, early 2017.
Exciting time in the world right now. Exciting time.
By which time season 2 had already finished airing. Between seasons 2 and 3, however, my time gap exceeded a year and a half. I saw the third season during mid-2018, but throughout its run, there was this feeling of not being able to fully understand some of the things that were going on. It made me realize that maybe a recap was necessary. Shortly after season 3 finished airing, creator Sam Esmail tweeted that season 4 would be the show's last. I remember feeling bittersweet, as I had to bid farewell to a show that I knew was really up to something but couldn't figure out exactly what. Sometime later in 2019, when promos announced that the final season would premiere on October 2019, my first thought was to revisit the entire show so far, all the 3 seasons, before I started with this last one. I've not even had a complete rerun of the most popular sitcom of the world, so this was a first for me. As a movie buff, there's a ton of stuff I'd like to rewatch, but I can't, because there's much more of other, newer stuff that I'd like to watch first. Mr. Robot, however, has most definitely been a very special exception. Each passing episode en route my recap journey has made me sadder, and it wasn't the bleak nature of the show to blame. Come season 4, I was torn between wanting to watch all the successive episodes ASAP and not watching it at all, as each passing episode was also an inevitable exercise in preparing to say goodbye to the show. Mr. Robot provides incredible thought processing value for any viewer with a hunger for food for thought. It's one of the major reasons I'm glad to have started writing about it midway through my rerun. While every episode can spark a full-blown discussion, every season has an episode or two where the makers outdo themselves and deliver an absolutely outstanding outing over and above the show's own stunningly unique, outlandish nature. Programming channel USA Network have shown their support in airing such episodes commercial-free, and it just goes to show how much respect the show has garnered. Much in contrast to the themes of isolation and loneliness that the show explores, the filmmaking involved here is very inviting. Each episode is sprinkled with Easter eggs throughout for audiences to either anticipate or just appreciate. Each episode is doused with pop culture references and throwbacks to the 80s, be it movies, shows, novels, or even nods to filmmakers themselves. Plot points mirroring the messed up current global economic and political scenario are way too on the nose to go unnoticed. Monologues are superbly used to offer scathing commentary. Some are thrown right in the face.
Fuck society.
While others are voiceovers that make great use of the fourth wall breaking narrative style.
They'll even have us build our own prison. This is what they wanted all along. For us to buy in on our worst selves.
Apart from being a self-confessed nerd, creator Sam Esmail is also a very self-aware individual with a strong voice and proves it with much success by executing the show the way he does. Cybersecurity specialists and hackers have also praised the accurate portrayal of hacking involved on the show. A deep dive into Mr. Robot will make one realize that although it demands attention, it certainly rewards it too. My increased awareness about the world within the show was heavily accentuated by listening to podcasts. En route my recap journey, I came across Post-Show Recaps, a self-explanatory podcast by two television journalists who basically strip down all elements of the show to its bare constituents. The discussion that follows provides an utterly satisfying communal experience to anyone who follows the show and wants to talk about it or hear someone talk about it. One of them also works for a leading publication, so there's the added advantage of having interviews with some of the key members of the crew and cast behind the show. Add to that the dissecting of what each and every scene, act, shot, or even sound possibly meant, and fun trivia about the little things that make the show. The podcasts have been a great source of relevant content related to the show that any fan would love chewing on. If the length of the podcasts are any indication about the commitment of the fandom towards the show, each podcast runs about an hour and a half. That's basically more than twice the length of an episode. These audio shows best serve their purpose when you're fresh off an episode or a series or a movie and you can't wait to discuss it with your friends, but they have no idea what you're talking about. There's a satisfying sense of like-minded companionship as the podcasters become the voices inside your head whenever a certain episode would land its gut punches. Complementary to that, the podcasts provide and explore hidden meanings, references, or throwbacks that an unassuming audience might have completely missed out on. Mr. Robot has major repeat viewing value in many aspects. The time spent with the characters, their individual journeys, and the head-banging plot twists that the show bakes gradually are best earned by the slow burn momentum that the show progresses with. There is so much attention given to detailing each and every single aspect of the show that it would only be fair when Mr. Robot is regarded as a modern classic and talked about in the same breath as Breaking Bad. If
I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger.
Then
I'm not someone you push around with a gun. I am the gun.
each body part of the show from a filmmaking standpoint can rightfully warrant one full viewing. Strong performances, even stronger writing and directing, quotable dialogues, powerful editing, carefully composed production design, incredible range of excellent background music and score, hand-picked selection of soundtracks, highly stylized opening titles and intros, and some very unique and exclusive cinematography make Mr. Robot operate on God mode. A technical achievement on all levels, and yet that is not what the show wants to be remembered for. At least that's not what Sam Esmail wants us to remember it for.
I don't care less about plot. I think plot to me, like, that's the part in the movie that I zone out. I don't care. I care more about the interesting dynamics between characters or relationships between characters, how they make choices based on how they feel from a character. That stuff is the stuff that's really interesting to me. And ironically enough, that actually is something you have more time to explore in TV than you do in features.
While Mr. Robot may bear its roots in the modern techno-thriller cyberpunk genre, at its heart, the show will go down in history as a very confidently presented, bizarre journey of wholesome characters who fall into a self-constructed pit of loneliness and make or break their paths in doing so. Each episode tends to offer feelings that alternate between crushing and cleansing the viewer's mind and soul. Combining the aforementioned strengths, the show creates excellent intrigue in its own highly original fashion, where the viewer is always left wanting for more. The fabric of the show seems to be stitched with contradicting extremes: high tension with warm emotions, moments of brutal honesty with a heavily unreliable and disorienting narrative, frightening creepiness with pitch black humor, and character-centered episodes following plot-heavy episodes. I know some folks who watched the show and stopped it midway because of its dark and depressing nature. While Mr. Robot is definitely not a casual viewing experience, I personally feel that, given the right treatment and purpose, the darkest of shows can ironically have a genuine uplifting quality to them. It's always appreciated when creators know when to bow out and not overstay their welcome with filler episodes or seasons. And in that regard, Mr. Robot surely set out with a definitive endpoint. Creator Sam Esmail had originally planned for Mr. Robot to be a feature film.
And I started writing Mr. Robot as a feature, and I got really long-winded with the script, as I tend to do. What happened was I started writing, I remember specifically, so I was like on page 90, and I was like, oh, this is not going well. Because I was like nowhere near the end of Act 1. I basically have written a feature already.
In hindsight, it would have been criminal injustice to the subject matter and the material dealt with, as a 2-hour treatment wouldn't even come close to what was achieved with the episodic storytelling structure. Each episode, and by extension season, is in service of a highly definitive vision which only seems to grow as the journey goes on. The fact that Sam Esmail single-handedly directed each episode from season 2 going forward is proof of the solidifying nature of the show's vision. The slow and steady build-up culminates into a powerful climax that manages to successfully soar beyond what the show makes you believe it was going for. The final season is a behemoth, with each episode hitting you left, right and center, with its narrative gut punches, shocks, twists and turns, and straight-up filmmaking genius. By taking really bold risks and turning them into unique creative surprises, the makers hit the nail right on the head as the finale, aided by every single episode that preceded it, leaves the audience not only emotionally fulfilled, but also mentally transcendent. There's an undeniably special, meditative quality about the show that makes it the cinematic equivalent of a beautiful head massage that one will surely keep wanting to go back to whenever one has had enough of the world. And in these days, quite frankly, that happens a lot.
I don't know, this one really spoke to me.